What do you think? One of the things I noticed on the forecast today, particularly from southern New England, from Boston, they're going for some areas, uh, and the way the ice storm warning lines up, it's west of the Hudson, and then right along the Connecticut state line and the Massachusetts New York state line, running northward from there. So there's this gap in the middle. Maybe you can explain to folks as you live up in that general region why it's not area wide coverage ice storm warnings on both sides of the Hudson.
Right. In fact, if you look at the warning maps, you can see that literally right along the Hudson, you can trace out the Hudson River on some of these maps. Down in the lower elevation areas, it looks like it's going to stay just mild enough for the precipitation to be in the form of just plain rain, a cold rain, albeit, but it will be a cold rain. But as you head again to the west of the Hudson and up into the higher terrain areas, or to the east of the Hudson, I just mentioned a few moments ago, northwestern sections of Connecticut, western sections of Massachusetts, the Berkshire Mountains, for example. These are areas, and of course the Catskills, and further north up into the Adirondacks, these higher elevation, these higher terrain areas are going to be seeing temperatures that are going to be just cold enough on the wrong side of the freezing mark for that precipitation to come on down in the form of freezing rain and sleet, and could cause a significant icing, a significant glaze. We're talking about anywhere from a tenth or a quarter of an inch, maybe even in the worst case scenarios, to maybe a half an inch. And it seems that I don't remember exactly what year it was, but I think it was about 15 or 20 years. These same areas on up into central and northern New England, Joe. Maybe Scott, if he's watching, has the year I'm alluding to. But there was a massive ice storm, a devastating ice storm for these same areas. I think it was about 20 years ago. Do you remember what year I'm
Yeah,
alluding to?
that would be, so we're talking about sometime in the 90s, right?
Yeah, probably
In the
about
late
20
90s.
years ago. Yeah.
So
And these,
I did see someone mention something in the late 90s. I saw it somewhere, but I can't recall the specifics. I'm just looking at I just put up the Weather Service forecast ice accretion, and just north and west of Kingston. I don't know what that point is there. I wish they had a few more geographic points that I could add on here so you can figure out exactly, because this is not the friendliest um, um, map to look at, but it looks like somewhere on the west side of the Hudson, north and west of Kingston, there's a 1.02 inch of ice.
I,
Now, look, I think I did also notice that some people, it's different when you're talking about ice accretion accumulation and snow accumulation. Okay, a half an inch of ice is significant. That is capable of taking down trees and power lines. Even a quarter of an inch is certainly enough to take down some vulnerable limbs on trees that might be weaker for one reason or another. So this is pretty serious stuff if this winds up verifying. And it makes it very tricky because you're really talking about freezing rain here. So it's how cold is the bottom of the atmosphere going to be? I think obviously that's going to be the critical question. And where does the cold air get trapped and where doesn't it get trapped? Albany only gets 600ths of ice, but you go north and west of there, it's already up to 2/10, and a little bit further north and west, you start to get into amounts of up to a half an inch. And also on the Massachusetts side, around Pittsfield, half an inch. But yet you go to Springfield, it's only a little over a tenth, and then the Weather Service forecasting 1500ths to 3/10 as you go further east towards Worcester.
yeah, and the if you travel, let's say on 95, and then make the turnoff onto Interstate 91 up the Connecticut River Valley, again, lower elevations, so not quite as much in the way of ice. But meanwhile, just to the west of I-91, into that zone, as I mentioned, in northwestern Connecticut and into the Berkshire Mountains, the higher elevations of western Massachusetts, that's where they have actually most of, if not all of Connecticut and Massachusetts under a winter storm watch or winter weather advisory. But in those higher elevation areas, that's where they have the ice storm warning, and that's where they're expecting the accretion to, again, as you mentioned, perhaps exceed a quarter, a half, even approaching like 1 inch, which is ridiculous, which is absurd. This would be a devastating ice storm if these forecasts come into play, come into pass over the next 24 to 48 hours.
Okay, by the way, I found my earbuds and I put them on, and a few people are commenting, including Mrs. Rayo, that the echo has disappeared. So maybe we finally have this whole thing worked out. Let's hope so. Okay, so back to the weather board, and I want to bring up snow because this is a big ski weekend in upstate New York and up through New England because of the upcoming New Year. If you're traveling, obviously, if you have an opportunity to be able to drive up to date, it's probably a better idea. Otherwise, you may have to wait till Tuesday if you want to avoid dealing with the freezing rain. Looks like it might be a fairly significant snow, a 6 to 10 inch type snowfall for up in central and northern Vermont into New Hampshire and Maine away from the coast. So that'll be a fair snowfall up for them. Although by Maine and New Hampshire and Vermont standards, this is probably not a big deal, unless there's ice. There's going to be ice accretion in some of these areas beforehand, and I think it's. I've always thought it's better to have snow first and then ice, as far as
Right.
as
Oh,
opposed to the other
absolutely.
way around.
Absolutely. The snow acts as a buffer. You don't want that ice on bare ground because if you do, then you're going to end up with an ice skating rink. And that's the last thing that you want to see happen. At least if you get a few inches of snow, the ice will be on top of that snow. The glaze will be on top of that snow. So all that you'll be dealing with is that crunchiness that will be on the snow. You can easily get rid of the snow and the ice at the same time. But if that ice starts accumulating or accreting on just bare ground, watch out. That is the recipe for a very dangerous situation. You know what I call this kind of situation, Joe? I call it a Jimmy Durante. In other words, what we have going against us here is the meteorological term for it is a warm nose, if you will.
Yes,
And this warm nose is going to penetrate into the mid and high levels of the atmosphere. Meanwhile, down here at the surface where you and I and
you
everybody
have a
else
cold
happens to be,
nose,
it stays cold. So you
right?
get that rain coming down into that shallow, cold layer, and that sets the stage for a really terrible situation in terms of icing.
All right, so let's not forget the rain out of this too, because for pretty much everybody from eastern Pennsylvania into southern New England and points north and east, this is going to wind up producing about 1 to 2 inches of rain. So in those spots, particularly, I think if you look in the Catskills, there's probably going to be some pretty serious icing up that way in Chuck Cardillo land. But the rainfalls of 1 to 2 inches. This has been a very wet December. We're going to finish up somewhere between 6 and 8 inches of rainfall for the month, which is almost three times normal.
Unbelievable. And yet, although we've had all of that rain, we also had a stretch of more than a few days with dry, pleasant, quiet weather, which you wouldn't expect in a month that's so wet. But it's been really weird. We've literally have been going back and forth, so to speak, in terms of extremes. Take a look at the month. Started off cold, started off snowy, then all of a sudden it went to dry and rather balmy conditions. And it looks like I think the pendulum is getting ready now to swing back
The other way,
more
to an
to
extent.
yeah.
To an extent, uh, the um, uh, the rainfall amounts. By the way, we don't want to ignore the fact that we've got some big snows going on. Let me just refreshen. Let me freshen. This is the probability of ice. Um, Hang on, bear with me here for one moment. 72-hour probability of freezing rain of at least, I have it set to at least 1/10 of an inch. Um, so you can see how
It's interesting. I noticed yesterday
WPC is doing this.
on last night the on the hand drawn probability maps from WPC College Park, Maryland.
Right.
They actually had places with a better than 70% chance of a quarter of an inch up in portions of central and north central New England. And for whatever reason today, the forecaster who was on duty this morning knocked that back down to only 40%. I'm not sure why he or she did that, but
Well, I have the 72-hour probability. It might be a time frame issue because I have the 72-hour map probability of at least a quarter of an inch.
mhm.
And in a stretch in upstate New York, north of I-90 and then gone northward from there, an 80 to 90% probability of at least a quarter of an inch.
Hmm.
And the 50% probability of at least a quarter of an inch goes all the way down into probably northeastern Sullivan County and on up through Ulster County.
Right.
And also, you've got this other area. It's funny when you look at the probability map, you can actually see the warm nose that comes up the Hudson Valley, up the Hudson River, because the
Right.
probabilities go way down and then they increase on either side. So you've got, mountain and valley issues with the Catskills on one side, the Berkshires in the other, and then, that kind of space in the middle where it's the cold air is going to have a much tougher time getting trapped.
It's unfortunate that these maps that we look at are all one-dimensional. Of course, in situations like this, with the higher terrain areas getting hit the hardest with the ice and snow, you would need to have something more three-dimensional to show you the areas of higher elevation.
Oh
This,
yeah, because that's a whole different world.
yeah, yeah,
I
exactly.
also I got WPC's map for snow, and and of course you've got this storm still ongoing in the Plain States, so you have uh, a greater 95% probability, 95 to 100% probability of at least four running. I'm sorry, for at least two running across the Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin. Then it kind of takes a jump and then comes back in upstate New York and up into northern half of Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. So it's pretty solid. I'm just going to take it to 4 inches, and it's a little bit of a smaller zone with the probability of four, but still fairly widespread across the northern plains, kind of skims across the northern Great Lakes, and then comes back into central and northern New England and upstate New York. So not too shabby, I suppose. There's not a whole lot of cold air around, so it's kind of limited with regards to, and we'll show you why when we get to the models, the limitations of the cold air at the moment, anyway.
Well,
Um,
if you really want a lot of snow out of this, and again, ice is going to be the predominant player here over the next 48 hours. But if you really want to see, 4 or 8 inches of snow, you travel on Interstate 87, the Northway, as we call it, as you go north of Albany, up toward Montreal. It looks like they could get hit with a good 4 to 8 inches of the white stuff, and in and around the Adirondacks. But again, the main player further south would be more ice than snow. At least that's how it looks to me.
I totally agree with you on that. Totally agree. Let me run through this real quick, so we'll get to the models here, Joe. WPC's 7-day forecast total precip. So this takes us right into next Sunday. So we've got this event for tonight and tomorrow, and then another one for late this week into early next weekend. And the eastern part of the United States, unlike when we were going into Christmas, where a lot of the country was not seeing much of any precip at all, we're making up for it now going into the new year with a fairly large area of 3 to 5 inch rains across the Gulf states and into the Tennessee Valley and nosing up into the lower Ohio Valley. And also and anywhere from 1.5 to 3 inch rains possible from eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, which we're not surprised if we're going to wind up with 1 to 2 inches from this. Maybe we'll have another ½ inch to an inch producer of precip at the end of the week. And the Northwest gets clobbered with a lot of rain precip from Oregon, Northern California, all the way up through Washington State. The eastern halves of Washington and I'm sorry, the western halves of Washington and Oregon on the order of 3 to 5 inches or more of liquid. And some of the heavier rains kind of extend down into Northern California and then down the coast offshore because we've got another system that's dropping southward from there. Mid-morning satellite loop, Joe, pretty well-defined system here. You actually have a little bit of blocking going on because this low is not racing up into Canada. It's moving up into Minnesota, and it's going to just kind of stall out and occlude and start redeveloping to the east because it can't really move to the north.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, Joe, all of the stuff that's happening out in the Pacific. If you think back west of the Mississippi, this scenario has been going on now, not since last month or not since October. Some places have been hit with wintry weather going back into the month of September. For
Well,
goodness,
right, that was that blizzard in that blizzard in
Montana.
in Montana, yes. And we've been since mid-October, we've been in this weather pattern that has essentially been 2 to 3 weeks of active, colder than average temperatures. Then it's followed by a week to 10 days where it's been just kind of boring, I guess, if you want to, for lack of a better word. Temperatures get on the mild side. It doesn't get crazy warm. On the other hand, there's not a whole lot of cold air around, and then the storminess sort of relaxes. And I think what's happening now, and this has happened twice, we had this. We're coming. I think we are coming to an end to the quote unquote boring period, which, if you want to trace it back, it goes back to about December 17th or 18th. So it lasting about 10 days. And I think now we're entering what's going to be a 3 week, another one of these 2 to 3 week stretches where we are going to see colder air gradually return. And then we'll see if that opens up opportunities for snow in areas further to the south this time around.
Yeah, yeah.
That
Well,
might be
really,
the signature for the whole winter.
December used to be, at least back when, used to be kind of like a slack month for winter. Although, as we pointed out on a number of occasions in recent years, it's seen more than its fair share of wintry weather, ice, and snow. But yeah, I would agree with you. I think we're going to be now heading into a much more active stretch. In fact, I have a feeling that I don't know why I'm saying this, but I just have a feeling that when we look back on the winter of 2019, 2020, that January is going to be the month that is going to be remembered as the real wintry and stormy month, as opposed to, let's say, even February and March. But I also think that since we've kicked off with more of a stretch of mild weather over the last couple of weeks, especially here in the eastern part of the country, that we may see wintry weather persist as we saw last year or
Right.
last winter
Oh, good.
into the month of March and maybe even on into the month of April as
Well,
well.
yeah. Yeah, we were cold for the first half of December. I looked at the stats in New York City a day or two ago, and for the month they were running just a little bit below average. So if you add the rest of these last 5 days or so, December is probably going to finish flat or a little bit above normal, but nothing to write home about.
Right.
Somewhere I often say that if you're plus two, anywhere between +2 and -2, to me is about where you could call that generally average. I think most years you fall inside that -2 +2 range. Anything outside of that is more significant. Clearly, by the way, the radar and we're coming up on 11 Eastern time is pretty busy. There's rain already moving into western New Jersey. And
Right.
precip seems to be coming in a bit faster. There's a lot of rain back through Ohio and down into southern Indiana and in through Kentucky. I want to check too, see if there's any kind of SPC issues. By the way, you can see the snow that's up back, snow going on back into northern Minnesota and through the Dakotas, where the snowfall's been fairly significant in some places. And of course, you've got more energy coming into California with more rain. But let me just check with see what's going on with SPC.
I didn't have a chance to look at any of the soundings or whatever, but it might be, although it looks on this radar that you have looping right now, it looks like for all intents and purposes, it's going to be raining, let's say, in New York City in the next couple of hours. It could very well be also that the atmosphere locally in points north and east is so much drier and colder that once that moisture hits that wall of dry air, it just evaporates before being able to penetrate into the New York metropolitan area. The forecasts, as you are well aware, Joe, have been suggesting or indicating that nothing is going to happen from a precipitation standpoint until very late in the day, if not after sunset. But again, by the looks of that radar that we were just looking at,
It's
it's
coming
just a
faster.
stone's throw away to our south and west.
Right. SPC, by the way, has a slight risk of severe weather across extreme northeastern Louisiana, central and northern Mississippi, northwest Alabama, nosing into southern Arkansas. You can see that the marginal risk extends from there. So Let's run through a couple of things with regards to the models. We've got actually enough of we certainly have the whole NAM in, and we're going to have enough of the GFS to look ahead into the next weather system. But you can see here, folks, if you watch the NAM, look at the low that's up in Minnesota. It doesn't make any northward progress at all. It just kind of spins away, and that's because you have, and the NAM does not extend far enough into Canada where we can see it, but there's high pressure that's enveloped completely around it. This part of the jet is kind of split away to a certain extent from what's going on up to the north. So rather than take a system northeastward and bring warm air up the eastern seaboard and send temperatures into the 50s and 60s everywhere, you've got cold air wedged in into New England and upstate New York, and you see where the purple and the blue being snow and the reddish purple area is sleet and freezing rain. But meanwhile, that surface low redevelops. You see, the primary low weakens in Minnesota, and a new secondary forms somewhere near Louisville, Kentucky, and that tries to move north, and that is also going to meet with limited success as it heads up into northern Michigan Monday morning, and that's going to redevelop. There's a low that's going to form right off the New Jersey coast Monday night, and you still have a really wrapped up low up near Lake Superior. This would argue that we will see on and off rain into tomorrow evening, but you see the extent of the freezing rain. There's up through upstate New York, and then it gradually changes over to snow as the secondary low forms, and this is why Maine gets into it. Also, you'll see a fairly busy lake effect going on through the lakes as that primary low kind of spins out. And finally, it all moves away. Weather conditions improve for New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. Don't see any big deal there. We are all on the same page with this, I assume.
I'm just looking also. You mentioned as that second storm winds up and moves away late Monday night into Tuesday. That helps to cave in, so to speak, the very high thickness levels. By tomorrow morning, our thickness is upstairs. We're talking about at 18,000 feet above our heads. At 5:59 at LaGuardia Airport, that's amazingly high. At the same time, though, we mentioned that cold, shallow layer of air down at the surface, the T1, the temperature at the lowest level of the boundary layer of the atmosphere is only 4 Celsius, and that by Tuesday morning, as the thickness collapses all the way down to 544, that thickness, the boundary temperatures dip to just above freezing, plus 1 Celsius
Right.
by 7 a.m. on Tuesday morning. So as you can see, the colder air does come swirling in as that secondary storm takes over, but not enough, at least in the immediate New York City and metropolitan area, for any kind of problems in terms of snow or ice. But meantime, to the west and to the north, it is quite cold. Albany, for example, the T1, Joe, hovers right around zero throughout the entire extent of this storm through Tuesday morning. And all you need to do is add a little bit of elevation, and you're in with some ice. And that's why places west and east of Albany in the higher terrain areas are going to be hit by that icing problem over the next 24 to 48 hours.
I put the NAM 2-meter temperatures up, and you can see the freezing line kind of nosing south down just west of Albany, down toward the Catskills during tonight. And it doesn't really do very much during the overnight. It kind of sits there. It actually advances southward during the day tomorrow. The 32-degree line drops down to the New York State Pennsylvania line, just north and west of New Jersey, and gets down, down into Sullivan County certainly, and into Ulster County. You're seeing it there, but that 40-degree isotherm is running right across New York City, just kind of hovers there all day long. And this is because you're getting this redevelopment. You're not getting this, the primary low of you have a low that dies out, redevelops, runs up northward toward Lake Superior, but it doesn't keep going. It just sits there. So the energy gets forced eastward. So you're getting the cold air kind of wedging down northeast southwest. When you look at the NAM isotherm profile, you're in the 20s up in Vermont and New Hampshire, and even in the teens in parts of northern Maine, and that's kind of wedging southwestward.
Right.
Which is pinning. It's making the argument for a very miserable raw day in places where it's just plain rain. Not too pretty.
Yeah, it's there's nothing nastier than late January, late December or January, having a raw east northeasterly wind coming off an ocean surface that is only around 40 degrees and not cold enough, at least not cold enough for any kind of frozen precipitation, but still a nasty, dreary, dank kind of scenario with temperatures hovering in the 30s to near 40 and periods of on and off chilly rain. But again, as you mentioned, Joe, it's all what we're going to see late tomorrow and tomorrow night is that those colder temperatures nose on down through the Hudson Valley and through northern and central New England. It's all part of a function of that secondary low, cutting off the warm air advection and setting the stage again for that significant wintry weather pattern for tomorrow and into tomorrow night.
All right, so I've got the GFS, the new GFS, which is out to a week from today. So maybe when I'm done gabbing, we'll have a few extra maps to look at to take us into Monday and Tuesday of next week. But when you look at this, folks, when you're looking at this upper air, a couple of things should stand out. One is the fact that you've got the flow across the United States. It's split. You're getting a flow from the Pacific. You've got this. This is backed, by the way, I've backed it to Thursday. Upper low over Southern California. That is our weather system that is affecting us now into tomorrow. But as far as what's been going on in Canada, I'm circling now the polar vortex. It is way up northwest. It's pinned north of Alaska. We've seen stories. I'm sure everyone has heard the stories about just how cold it is. Record cold for Alaska. They haven't seen cold since 2012 up like this for the month of December anyway. And as a result, the upper flow around that polar vortex essentially has all the cold air trapped up there. The upper air winds are not running, as we often refer to as being cross-polar. In other words, you get the winds are coming from the polar regions, moving southward through Canada and into the United States. Instead, the winds in Canada are kind of in a bit of a mess here, where they're blowing predominantly west to east, but even there, it's not clean. The only place that's getting a little bit of cold Canadian air is, again, northern New England and upstate New York. Now, running forward, what is going to happen is that polar vortex is going to start to get kicked away to the north, to the east. And you see it here as we move through Friday and Saturday. Doesn't really move very much, but now through today and Monday and Tuesday, it gradually gravitates toward Greenland. And as you watch the polar vortex go there, you're also seeing some changes across the U.S. during this week. And suddenly, when we get down toward the end of the week and going into next week, and again, I only have now into Sunday, but you do start to see a bit more of a flow that is coming down from Canada and into at least the northeastern part of the United States. Your polar vortex still is somewhat separated from that, but it is trying to connect. And I think, Joe, what we're going to see going forward is opportunities for winter storms will come if that polar vortex is going to sit up there that far north. It's going to be a matter of when it rotates in such a way where it creates a flow from northern Canada down into the eastern part of the United States to bring down cold air. If you've got that going on and you still have a Pacific that's sending weather systems along, those, I think, will provide the opportunities for wintry precipitation in areas that are further south and haven't seen much so far this young winter season.
Well, the two things about that. Number one, the system at the end of this week, the one that's coming in for Friday into Saturday, it seems to me like the GFS is a little bit more robust and faster than the European. That the system on Friday seems to come in and then quickly get kicked out on Friday into Saturday, according to the GFS, whereas the European kind of is bringing this whole mass of moisture up and slowly through here during Friday into Saturday, lingering it on into Saturday. The other thing about the polar vortex migrating or shifting more to the south and east, you want to hope that if you're a snow lover or if you're somebody who wants to see some storminess, you got to hope that that upper system is not too strong, because it may end up taking whatever storminess is in the southern branch and kicking it to the coastline, but kicking it just off to our south, and whereupon we would miss out on a lot of the potential storminess into the early part of January. And these are things that will have to eventually be worked out and will have to come together as we get closer to the beginning of the new year on into the early part of January.
All right, so I'm going to run the GFS through here, and we've got our store. This is, what we're dealing with tonight and tomorrow night and Tuesday. Tuesday, Wednesday, weather conditions improve. You see that next round of energy coming into the northwest. The energy that is dropping down along Southern California now, and for Monday swings across Mexico and then comes out on the Gulf side. You've got a low running to the lakes again, with some rain here looks like for Friday. Doesn't look like a whole, doesn't look like very much. And I'm just kind of looking at this into Sunday. I mean, it looks like it gradually turns colder here in the east. You've got a diver of a system. I'm looking at this, Joe, now on this particular run of the GFS. It's got a really, really strong northern stream system for Monday, January 6th. It's got like a 979 low northeast of Lake Huron. It looks like a strong Arctic front that's coming, rather strong Arctic front that comes on through here. I don't have enough yet. It's only out to 198 hours, so I can't see. Let's see what the upper air looks like.
Sometimes on these Arctic systems, you get a bit of what we call bagginess, and as the Arctic air starts coming in, you get something, a little wave that develops on these frontal lines, and they quickly come up and give you a quickie few inches of snow.
I mean, there's two short waves. You've got a lead, much stronger short wave from the 6Z run that runs into east of Lake Huron, and that would be a cold front that comes on through. There's another short wave right behind it, near just passing Lake Winnipeg, that's dropping southeastward. But again, I'm trying to envision where this goes. On the old run, it was weaker and further east with the lead system. By Monday afternoon, for the same time frame, you had an upper low sitting between upstate New York and James Bay. The next short wave was already dropping into into Virginia, North Carolina for Tuesday, and that's where you get your wave that developed, and then there's a short wave right behind it. It looks like the 12Z run on the GFS is going a slightly different way here, making for a stronger lead system, and you just wonder whether there would be any room for anything else. But I would just caution here that the GFS for days has actually been flipping back and forth from run to run, showing something of significance for the 6th, 7th, 8th time frame. Then it backs off, and it has something, the north being more important, and it's nothing more than a simple cold front. So I would just I wouldn't put too much stock yet in what the GFS may have to offer. It's just not been doing very well at all. These last couple of weeks with the models, Joe, have been particularly volatile. It's just been kind of crazy with them doing all sorts of weird things and going back and forth, and it's made it very tough to forecast.
Right, and looking ahead to the early part of January, you see the flip-flop. We've had for the last couple of weeks the west cold and the east has been unusually mild, and now all of a sudden everything is flip-flopped now. Now it looks like the west is going to be enjoying some mild weather, while we here in the east go through not only colder weather, but again, as you just mentioned, Joe, the potential of volatility. It's all going to be dependent, I guess, as to whether, where and when we might get the northern and southern streams to teleconnect and produce a rather significant round of precipitation for us. But I will say this, it looks like a lot more interesting weather coming our way for the at least the first half of January, as opposed to what we've seen here locally over the last couple of weeks of December.
Okie AG on the board. I just took a peek. Uh, he mentions that, you know, well, we try to pay attention to everybody across the country, and we don't always necessarily get to what he has referred to as the flyover states. But because the folk, we do have actually folks that watch from all over the country, which is wonderful. But looking at the rest of the country this week, actually with the storm pulling out of the plains, it looks fairly quiet. There's some action that comes in from the Gulf states into Louisiana and Mississippi and goes east, and you can see it there. I'm sorry, that was a good reminder for me to make sure I put this up full screen so everybody can see. I thought I did, but here we have. We look at the rest of the nation here. The system coming into the northwest brings some snows up into the northern and central Rockies. Nothing really to write home about. A low is going to come out from the system and dropping down to California now and run through the Great Lakes. So it looks like at least some rain, mostly from the Mississippi River eastward, and maybe some snow up in the Dakotas. But everybody else looks fairly dry. And through the weekend and into next week, yeah, I have, by the way, through 222 hours on the GFS. It's hard for me to see how it's going to suddenly come and produce a low when you've got northerly isobars running from James Bay to Florida with 516 thicknesses driving southward into North Carolina. It just seems like the GFS on this run is saying that it's basically a strong low that moves across southern Canada with a cold front, and that's it. But I would not put stock in it. And for everybody else, pockets of precip here and there, but the weather looks quiet. It looks like most of the cold is going to be shifting to the east as we move into the first full week of the month of January, as we've been saying.
Well, at least it's a change for so all of you snow lovers out there. You want to at least make it feel a little wintry. I think you're going to get your wish probably by the 6th and 7th of January, and then we'll just have to work on getting you a significant storm to interact with that cold weather. Although, again, the way the GFS has been rather inconsistent lately, Joe, it's going to be tough to try to make any significant outlook for any area for beyond, let's say, 3 or 4 days.
By the way, one of the things that we haven't really spent a lot of time on is, and it comes up every once in a while. I see Brandon Doherty brought it up today with regards to the polar vortex up in the stratosphere, and the folks that follow it, including Dr. Judah Cohen, who follows it religiously in his analysis, talking about the fact that it's all wrapped up like a tight little ball up in the Arctic region, which keeps most of the cold air up there and doesn't really allow it. And we saw on the upper air how that's being reflected with the vortex that was stuck over Alaska. But one of the big questions is that what sometimes goes on in the stratosphere does not necessarily translate to the bottom part of the atmosphere. And we saw that last year when that polar vortex split in two in late January, and it never coupled with the pattern at the surface. The Pacific jet was just way too dominant. And I just wonder whether we might be seeing something like that here, where the polar vortex is doing what it's doing, but maybe it doesn't couple with what's going on down in the lower atmosphere, and we wind up seeing a different scenario. I'm certainly no expert on this sort of stuff. That I leave that to those who really spend their time researching it and seeing the impact from day to day. But I guess it would kind of make sense if it doesn't couple, then we could go on our merry way and the weather will be what it will be.
Yeah, a lot of fast movement, and we've even seen just in the last month or so the atmosphere across the United States literally become almost zonal, straight west to east. You want to see some buckling if you want to hope to see any kind of unsettled conditions, and certainly we're going to see a bit of a buckling with the dropping of that upper low from Alaska into the northern and central sections of North America during the first half of January. Now the question is, can we couple it up with something along the south end of the jet stream to produce any kind of a major or significant storm? It doesn't seem like that's going to happen, though, at least during the next week or two. We'll get the cold, but it doesn't look like we're going to see anything dramatically active in terms of storm activity. But again, the GFS, as you just mentioned, Joe, is so inconsistent. As I mentioned the last time we were together, sometimes these things can just pop up out of nowhere within a matter of just a few days. I mean, who's to say? We're looking all the way down the road 10, 12 days. Sometimes these things just pop up over a span of just a couple, 3 days, and all of a sudden, bang, you're in line with significant rain or snow, and that may very well happen, especially as we get into the second week of January, I think.
Right. Elizabeth Harrison brings up one of the great heroines of our time, Joe, Gladys Kravitz.
Abner.
Right. She makes and you're right. Gladys was very big. She was always constantly looking out the window to see what was going on over at the Stevens house on Bewitched.
and that always was so in other words, we're the Gladys. I don't think we're the Gladys Kravitz. We have a lot of viewers who are Gladys Kravitzes and are trying to look out the window and seeing. I think I see something coming our way in about 12 days.
That is kind of how we operate. Seriously,
Yeah.
we sort of work that way, and then we feel compelled to tell everybody as well. Although we do it with a certain amount of we're more subdued about it. You and I think.
Right. Who did you like better? I don't know the actresses' names. Who did you like? The first Gladys
Pierce. Alice Pierce was, very sad what happened with Alice Pierce, and you can actually see it manifest itself in her last season that she was on. She won an Emmy, but it was given after she died, posthumously. She had developed ovarian cancer. And apparently she didn't tell anybody. She just kept on working, and everybody found out afterward. I guess in watching the old black and whites of that particular show, I was probably a bigger fan of Alice Pierce and her work.
I don't know if you remember, but she and the actor who played Abner, her husband, they did a bunch of very popular commercials for Nuco margarine.
Yes.
You remember
that?
Well,
Abner was played, the actor's name. I saw 3 movies yesterday on Turner Classic Movies that he was in. Oh boy. Now it slips my mind. I used to be so, my ability to retain useless information has really gone downhill, Joe.
Yes.
I think I could Google it. What was his name? It's like on the tip of my tongue. Who played? I know when it comes up, I'm going to be mad. Abner Kravitz, and it was George Tobias.
Okay.
George Tobias, who shows up in so many wonderful movies over the years, and
he could have played Raymond's father on Everybody Loves Raymond.
Oh yeah, I mean he was just he played all sorts of different roles. He's the heavy, the sort of the good guy, best friend type of character. But yeah, he was perfect for that role. He really was. He made some really good cracks about her. Oh boy. So what are your plans this week? Obviously, you have the Twilight Zone marathon coming up.
Right. It's a funny thing. I forwarded. I have Optimum on my cable system, and already forwarded to Sci-Fi to see, and they're all going to do it in chronological order. So they're going to run through, I guess, the entire 5 or 6 years over a span of a couple of days. My favorite episode, as I mentioned earlier in a previous Joe and Joe is the one with Donald Pleasance, The Changing of the Guard,
Yes.
the professor who teaches at a boys' school up in New England and feels that he has done nothing in 50 years of teaching, and then all of a sudden, all of his former students from many years come back from the dead to tell him how much he meant to them. So I'm looking forward to that. Um, last night, last night on MeTV, and my Dennis Cassia, who's a friend of ours here on Joe and Joe, he and I, when we were growing up, we were big monster movie fans. And last night on MeTV at 8 o'clock, they had a weekly show called Svengoolie, and they ran last night a movie which I must have seen 50 times when it was on $1 Million movie back in the 60s, The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms.
Oh, good God.
And it's released through an atomic explosion, comes down the eastern seaboard of North America and makes landfall, comes on shore in Brooklyn and destroys Coney Island or whatever.
Oh, jeez.
And I'm saying to myself, here I am all these years later, lying down in my bedroom watching this horrible. As I said to my wife afterwards, I said that movie was so bad it was good.
Oh, those are the best kind of movies. Let me just say, really, thank you very much. I am a new grandfather, number two. For Scott Briller, Johnny Quest, Brandon Doherty, Timothy Veltman, thank you very much for the new grandson cigar hitting Super Chat today. I appreciate it very much. Thank you. By the way, Joe.
You want this cigar?
No, we went through that already. Christinapedia. You should tell everybody because you found this. We mentioned it the other night, but maybe let's mention it again. Christinapedia said how much she loves the Honeymooners Marathon, which if you live in New York and you get WPIX TV Channel 11, they always do that around Christmas and New Year's.
Right.
But you found on YouTube the Honeymooners original show open, which is different from what you see when they plays in syndication.
First of all, it's wrong in the sense that whoever put it up said it's the 1954 opening to the Honeymooners. The Honeymooners, the classic 39 as we call them today, didn't get started until the fall of 1955.
Right.
But it started differently. It still starts with a fireworks barrage, but instead of showing the rising full moon and Jackie Gleason's face morphing into that full moon, and then the names of Joyce Randolph and Art Carney superimposed on full moons. It shows a bus, an MTA bus from the 1950s, and then it shows a Buick. They were sponsored by Buick back in the 50s when it was first run back in 1955, 56, and the Buick actually passes the bus. And the narrator, whoever is doing the announcing, says, "And away we go." And then you go right into the episodes that we've become so used to. But it's a totally different opening compared to what we have been seeing over all these years on the syndicated versions of the Honeymooners. And by the way, for those of you Honeymooner fans, there is a Honeymooner Facebook page, which I am proud to say that I am a member of, and it is a regular riot. If you've ever seen this page, Joe, sometimes all somebody has to do is just use a quote from the Honeymooners, and immediately everybody starts using other quotes as well.
Betsy Luna pointed out, I don't know if you know it, the name of the song that's the opening to the Honeymooners.
I think it's called, and Jackie Gleason, who was a tremendous composer, a lot of people don't realize he actually composed a lot of music. I think that particular theme song is called "My Greatest" or "Your Greatest Love" or "My Greatest."
Ding, 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 ding. You got it. Very good. Very good. Yes. Yeah, exactly. And it was co-written by Ed Norton. Dun, 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 dun.
A lot of people don't realize also that Art Carney had a hit. Sometimes you can, if you go on Dr. Demento's YouTube site, you might be able to find it, or maybe you could just type it on YouTube. "Songs of the Sewer" by Art Carney. Yeah, in the role of, or in the guise of Ed Norton.
What a title!
"We sing the songs of the sewer," and that actually was a hit for a while back in the mid '50s.
Oh, how funny is that? So let me just say really quick: Steve Lapointe, David Schwartz, Jason Schaefer, Timothy Veltman, Brad Doherty, Johnny Quest, Scott Briller. Thank you all very much for hitting Super Chat today. Really appreciate it greatly. Thank you. It's
Now,
really
Steve
nice,
LaPont,
really nice of you.
Steve LaPont says, "Here's to both of you, $10. Have a beer on me." You know,
Awesome.
I've told people this incredulously. In all of my years on this earth, Joe, I have never ever drank either a glass or a bottle of beer. I've never had
Really?
in my entire life, and this is a bit of an embarrassment to my wife because she is a director of the local German club, and we have a big German fest and also a big Oktoberfest. And sometimes some of the guys who are members of the German club, they come up to me and say, "Why don't you ever drink some beer? You know, why don't you ever become a man?" It's funny, but I have never had the gumption to drink beer, and it's weird to me sometimes when I see my daughter and my son drinking beer. But I have never drank beer in my entire
Really?
life.
Well, I'll tell you my experience with. I grew up from my earliest memories. In my house, we were surrounded by wine. We had wine at every meal. It was not unusual for me or for as somebody under the age of 5 that you would get a little glass of wine that was diluted with water. Okay.
Right.
So my father once made the mistake of giving it to me in public, which was a little which created an issue. But those were the early '60s. But I enjoy the occasional glass of wine. Beer, I have no tolerance for. I have a very very low tolerance for alcohol, so I can drink one glass of beer if it's one of the lagers, the heavy the heavy dark beers like a Sam Adams. I might be able to drink a glass and a half. But if I have anything more than that, when I hear people who drink they say they've had like 5 beers or 6 beers, I'm thinking, how can you hold it down? Because if anything past that, I get physically ill. So for anything, if I have any kind of alcohol, I can take a very minimal amount. So as a result, I just really don't drink very much. I sometimes have a glass of wine with dinner. Or after dinner to relax, I might have a glass of port. Or if I'm smoking a cigar, I'll have a glass of port with that. But I kind of relate more to I can relate to what you're saying.
Yeah, I have the strongest, and of course, we're going to have New Year's Eve. I'll always toast with my wife a little, glass of champagne. The strongest thing I ever will drink, believe it or not, is Mike's Hard Lemonade, and I
What?
only huge bottle of champagne, which playfully we opened up and we sprayed it out in the parking lot. But then I actually drank, Joe, I would say about a quarter of that champagne. I just drank from the bottle, and it was amazing. My sister got very concerned. She was seeing me drink this champagne. She's saying, "Joe, are you going to be all right? Are you going to be?" Because she was afraid I was going to get drunk. She never saw me drink that much alcohol in one dose. But everything was fine. But I'm with you. I'm not really big into alcohol.
Let me just really fast, Joe. I took some kind of internet hit, lost the signal, then it came right back.
Is that why
Chris,
the two blue lights on my microphone were flashing all of a sudden?
yeah, no, the internet just kind of died on me for a second. But we're pretty well into the show. Now I'm having a tough time getting on YouTube. So hang on here.
Well, we've been on for about an hour, haven't we?
Yeah, I know. Waiting for YouTube. Oh, there we go. Um, oh, come on. Hang on there, folks. I don't know if you guys could still hear us. I think it says that the live stream is still going on. Just waiting for YouTube to reload. So I'm not exactly sure what happened here, but
I had a buffer wheel for about 10 seconds.
okay. Um, there we go. Yeah, so we're back. So we just came back long enough to say goodbye. I wanted Jason Kaplan hit super chat. Thank you very much. Thanks to everybody who hit super chat today. David Schwartz, I know you hit it late too. Thank you. Brandon Doherty, and if I left you out, it's because I had the list of people who hit it and that's disappeared. Sorry about that. I don't know what that was. We just took a bit of an internet hit here. So hopefully the audio's been pretty good. I haven't seen anybody complain since I put the earbuds on. So maybe that finally solves our problem. Maybe that finally solves our issue with the audio that we've been having. So
I just want to say for the people who hit Super Chats, Joe, Scott Briller, Johnny Quest, Brandon Doherty, Tim Veltman, Jason Schaefer, David Schwartz, Steve LaPont, Jason Kaplan. A lot of Jasons here. And that seems to be it, at least.
Okay. All right, great. So what's your plans for this week? What are we doing?
I'm not doing much of anything. My brother-in-law, John, and his wife, Marie, will be coming and spending New Year's Eve with us Tuesday afternoon and Tuesday night. And a new year begins on Wednesday. And the only good thing I can say about 2019, Joe, and I think you will agree, the only good thing is that at the stroke of midnight on Tuesday night, we can all say good riddance.
Yes. It's not been it's been a bit of a difficult year, but at least from a personal standpoint, with me with a new grandson, and he was my daughter wasn't due until January 11th, so he not only came early, but he provided them with the child tax credit and the additional child tax credit. So
yes.
My son-in-law is very happy about it. All right, so look,
from your standpoint, a new grandson. From my vantage point, the only really good thing that happened for me this year is that my daughter Maria graduated with a master's degree. She was up at SUNY New Paltz, so that really was, her graduation. Finally, I'm done with financing 2 kids in college, so that was good. I won't get into everything else that happened to us this year, but I'm hoping that we'll be seeing a lot better things coming our way in 2020.
All the best to you. I will be around tomorrow if you want to do a live stream tomorrow night. I'm good with that.
Okay. We'll see how it all pans out.
So all right. So everybody have a great Sunday. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being very patient with the technical issues, which is the fun of doing things. It's the fun of technology, I guess. So have a great day, and we'll, of course, keep you updated. Make sure you've got the free apps that are available on Google Play or on the App Store, the Meteorologist Joe Chaffee weather app and Angry Ben's weather app, the Angry Weatherman. So download them so that you can not only follow the weather that's going on, but you can actually even watch these live streams on the app itself. All right, have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.